Alright, so today I'm going to show you guys how to do this right here. And that box right there is a little bit funky. You're going from a flat piece of metal on the left there to a piece with a shadow bend. And what we're going to do is we're going to keep that the box the same size as over here. Roughly the same size, and they don't have anything framed, so I'm going to show you how I match the sizes and keep the looks very similar, and how to bring those angles together like I did over here. It's a little bit windy today, so hopefully my little pom-pom on my microphone is doing its job, but I'll show you the one that we're going to go over now. Alright, you can see just how windy it is today. Pretty wild. But yeah, right here, they didn't frame anything, but we're going to build that out of metal. And we're going to make it look the same as the other side, even a little bit better. So I'll be back. Alright, so to establish this one, I went about a ½ inch over from the corner. You can go flush or even bigger over if you want, but I think a ½ inch looks good. So we got that plumbed up right there, and we're going to figure out how far down it comes here. And this is a 5½ inch block, so if I measure off the plywood right here 5½ and intersect those, that gets me where I need to be. Now on a different one, I didn't do this part right here, but I highly recommend doing this. What we're trying to do is see if this is staying square off the house. You can see that this fascia is actually up a little bit, so their blocks are angled up. So that's actually going to make this cut tapered a little. But this is all kind of a side note. You could skip ahead to where I'm doing the other one if you wanted to. I'm just going to keep this level across here and put it right on that point. And now I'm going to swing it up so it contacts the fascia. And then mark where it contacts the fascia here. And I know that's where this point comes out here. It's actually further up this way, I think. But that's going to keep our box square on the house, and it's going to keep it plumb going up as well. Okay, I guess I'm going to show you how to do this one too. So we have these points, this plumb line, this square, that square, and now what we're going to do is measure up to where the bottom of the soffit is going to be. My soffit is 3/4 thick, and it's going to go flat this way. So it actually makes it a little bit longer when you're considering the angle. It comes down about 1 inch on the angle or so. So now we're going to measure to where the bottom of that soffit's going to be. That's right there. Then we're measuring to basically the top of the corner, which is 11 3/4. So 11 3/4 on the back side. And now we need to hold this level and then measure from there down to there. So from right there down to where the soffit is level. And this is quite a bit more work to do it this way than if they would have framed a box, but it's all right. And now we're just going to hold ourselves level and then go right to that mark, and it's a little bit of guesswork. Looks like we're at 13 3/16. Everything looks pretty good at 13 3/16. And then we need to minus whatever this is on the angle, and I think it's pretty close to an inch. Yeah. So that makes it 12, we'll go 12 and a quarter because we want to make sure that we're tight against the bottom of the soffit. So you can see that we taper a 1/2 inch going up, and that's because, like we already established, this thing here is up. So we're gonna have a taper on this back cut here, but everything else is gonna be square, and I think that's the way that makes the most sense to me, to just have it off in one place. You could move this back out and throw this out of square this way, but I like this way better. So we'll get that thing cut. All right, we got our 12 and a quarter there, or yeah, 12 and a quarter, and then our 13 or 11 and 3/4 right there. And I marked 1.5 inches bigger because we're going to leave an 1.5 inch tab. And you can see for the back side of this, I bent it just like I do all my other ones, but I made a tab here, and that's going to be so I can nail it to the wall there. It's kind of a long snip, so I'm just going to knife it actually, and then I'll snip the last little bit of it. One clean score should be all you need, and you should feel your knife blade biting into the aluminum, and right there it kind of slid a little, so it's taking a little bit of extra bending to get that off of there. All right, we got our tab bent down. You can see it's a little wiggly, but it'll seat against the soffit, and that'll straighten it out. Now we're just gonna hold it up here about where it needs to go, roughly. And we're just gonna guesstimate somewhere in between there and there. And I need to sharpen that pencil, so we'll switch them out. And I just need to make sure that I'm not cutting off too much. Okay, so now what we want to do is establish how big this tab is on the bottom and on the top. Looks like it's about 3/4 on the top, and it's closer to 7/8 on the bottom. And then we'll carry these marks over about 7/8 there, and then it was 3/4 on the top. Now we know where to nail this thing, and that was, I'm just going to double check that. Yeah, 7/8. Well, maybe it's closer to 7. No, kind of hard to tell. Actually looks like it's 7/8 on top and bottom. 7/8, that's a better way to check it. Yeah, it's 7/8 top and bottom. So I'll make a new mark, just kind of a guesstimation right there. Okay. Now, in theory, we should be able to set it on this mark, top and bottom, and we're just going to tack it for now so we can do some other marking. And when I when I measured out for where this tab goes, I made sure to get an exact measurement. Because you need to be exact from up at this point here. You need to be exact at 12 and an eighth. That way, this point right here isn't too far out or too far in. It'll dimple everything in. So now we're gonna hold it, which should be in line with that mark we made earlier. It looks like it's up a little high. So I might have to cheat it a little bit out, which is gonna throw it a little out of square. This way. So I want to make sure I have my 3/4 here, otherwise my soffit's not going to fit in there. I'm going to cheat it out a little and just kind of measure in there. Yeah, it looks like 3/4 is about right there, and I'm measuring to that point. So now we have it where we want it here, back there, and we're up against the bottom over here. And we're just going to make sure this metal is pushed in, and now we can scribe it on the end. And now we can cut this thing to size, and then I can nail it on there. And I can go more with these cuts. I just don't want it sticking past the other fascia. So I just generally go maybe a 1/16 short with them. And now we gotta find those same holes. And sometimes I like to actually work that nail in a little bit more. And then I can easily find the hole that it was in before. But because this thing is like that, I actually want to weight it down a little bit. And this is the part that's not really my favorite, but it'll be okay. It'll be fine. I would do this on my own house. So that's in the right hole there. And finding that same hole. I can't see what I'm doing. You guys can't either, probably. There we go. I can nail it home. It just takes a few tacks on these things. It doesn't take a lot. And now we're holding this point good, making sure it's where it's got to go. And we can tack this straight in, and then one more up here. And you'll notice I angled that way again. That way I can put tension on this box and not bow it out. So that's how we establish this one. Now we'll go on to the other side. And we know that we had 12 1/4 for right here, this height. A side note, so the way we did everything there, I already had my corner set 3/4 below the upper fascia. So the way we leveled everything in and all that, you can see that we came out pretty level there, and also pretty level this way too. So all that way of doing it just really helped keep that thing level. And this looks worse than it is. This block is actually out of square too. You can see that block is way out of square. So it'll look nice once the soffit's in. All right, so we're getting over here, and I'm just gonna cut this kind of sort of where I know it's gonna be long enough. And then I won't have to hold it there as I'm trying to measure things in. Another way to figure out where this thing is planing down here is just hold your level against the blocks and just trace it like that. And now we can just hold our tape sort of square, and we're looking for 12 1/4, and I actually came really close with this end here. Okay, so now we're gonna check and see how square this is again. And I'm making sure to hold my square good on this side here, and then butting it right up against our block. I'm trying to stay perpendicular to all this here. I don't want to be angled like this way, because that's not going to give me a true reading. So you go just like that, and it's really close. Now, because it's close to square, I'm going to actually cut this back and front the same on this one. It's just going to be a little easier because I can just mark the 12, and then I can just, the 12 1/4, and I can just stick it up there, and then I'll know based on whether that's squared this way where I need to cut this. You could mark a bunch of plumb lines coming down and then measure from there down to here where it's 12 1/4, and then you'd be able to cut this off, and you could figure it out that way too. Well, the good news for you guys is that you get to see how I bend these boxes now, and I already know the length of these things. And all I'm doing is getting my 1.5 inch leg on the bottom there. I had my box blow off the back of my plank, and it dented it up. I have another video where that happens too. I'm just going up to a 90 here. And I gotta go grab my 2-foot square. All right, so this box is for the right side of the wall, and so it's over there. So I know the long portion has to be on the right side. And I measured out to the fascia, and it was just smaller than 12 inches. So I'm gonna give myself a I'll do maybe a 1-inch tab will be good. We go 1-inch tab, and then it's gonna be just shy on 13 because we're going just shy on 12, and we gotta add 1 inch to that. And now we just square this up. Square both of these up. Be a little nicer if I had a better place to work. Some people have their brakes set up in their trailer permanently. Mine is not. Pretty rare for me to drop these, but I did on video twice. All right, so we got those both squared, and I pretty much make my 45s the same way every time. I go this way, and then with my 45 I go this way, because I can get my snips right into that corner if I go that direction. And now we got to cut off this bottom leg here. meet that mark. And I can just put a little tiny snip here, and what that does is just transfers my mark to the other side for that part of it. So now I'll be able to see it there. And I'm just gently clamping down, getting it close. Try to hold it right there. And now I'm holding even pressure with this clamp here, keeping it on that mark. Work my way down to there. And now this bit's a little bit tricky. I want this 45 to overlap on the bottom, so if I pull this down and push that in a little, it'll get them to clear by. Then I want to watch it real close as I'm bending it up. And I can't quite reach the handle, so I'm just grabbing right there. And you don't want to go too far, because you'll start to run into this bit right here and you'll dimple it on the outside. So you want to go just to a 90, and you can squeeze it against there a little. And now we unclamp it. And now I need to go to the other side of the brake to get this portion there. And my sawhorse situation is less than ideal here. Alright. And this I'm going to double check with my tape once I get it clamped in, because this needs to be exact. And I'm just using my snip on this side as a gauge where I cut that bottom leg out to, and then the snip that I made there as a reference. Clamp it in, and should have kept this with me. You can see just how windy it is here. This thing is blowing all over the place. We're at 11 and 15/16, and we're closer to 12 there, so I need to scooch it a little bit. Oof, this is tough. You just kind of remember where you're at, and you'll know where to clamp it to make that tiny adjustment. Right there. That should be it. Yep, 11 and 15/16. 11 and 15/16. And now I'm going to help this a little bit as I bend it so that it doesn't dimple it. And that's how I bend these boxes. So there you go. So it's definitely a good idea to put some weight on that box so it's not going to blow away when you're doing other things. And I made a few plumb lines going up here. I kind of changed my mind how I wanted to do this. And mark where 3/4 intersects that mark, the plumb line. And I'm looking for 12 1/4, and it's still up a ways. Actually looks like it's going to work out. I actually cut this thing a little shorter than it needed to be, which is okay because it's going to land on top of that bottom leg of the box that we made. I intended to leave this long and then cut it off, but it didn't happen. So we're going to leave the whole bottom right on this thing. We're going to butt against the bottom leg of that F channel. And we're just getting a guesstimation here. And looks like right about here. Got a lot of wiggle room in there. And I mean, I think that's looking pretty good. It looks like it might be a little out of square this way. So I'm gonna grab that square. And this is all almost your imagination here. Trying to figure out where this is supposed to go. Yeah, so it's gonna come back a little. And make sure that top is in. And you can see it's not square there. So you drag it back. And there's probably a better way to do this, but right now I'm just getting a general idea here. That's actually looking pretty good right about there. So I think, yeah, the F channel is good. Since I have my F channel on here, I'm gonna level over with the bottom of it. And that's gonna give me a point to measure to. And I have plumb lines there, so that's gonna get me really close. So we wanna go up to 12 1/4 and holding my tape nice and plumb and mark the top of my tape there. And now I can intersect these 3/4 down from that line. And that right there is where I want to corner that metal. And I need to measure my tab again. Looks like I have 1 1/16. Or an inch. Looks like an inch. So I'll go over from here, that mark where they intersected, 1 inch, and I should be able to plumb that down and put that tab of the metal right there, and it should work out and be level in every direction. Because we accounted for this 12 1/4 and the inch tab, and you can see that I cut that F channel quite a bit short, but it's underneath that leg of the metal, so it's good. So this is much like the other side we did. We're just going to tack it and then try to see how it's looking. So we're 3/4 down this way, back there. And now if we move this to, the points I'm worried about now is this point here and this point here. And I want this to be 3/4 down here and this to be 3/4 down as well. And that needs to go up, which means that it needs to come that way. And already you can see that we're out of square this way. So this whole thing needs to get shifted that way, which will close this in. And there was a little bit more than 3/4 there. So we're going to go ahead and pull these nails and shift it over about 1/2 inch. And this is, like I was saying, I mean, this is all kind of done with your imagination, and it's not an easy thing to do a box with no framing there for you. It's a little bit of trial and error. All right. And I'll grab that 2-foot square and see how we're looking. I went a little bit too much, I think, maybe. Yeah, looks like we're 1/8 inch out of square. A little closer there. And I'm sighting up here to see if we have the 3/4. I got a pretty good eye for it. Actually had to move a little bit over, so I think it's pretty square now. And make sure we have our 3/4 here. All right, how are we looking? It's only an 1/8 inch there. And it's maybe an 1/8 inch there the other way. We got our 3/4 there, our 3/4 there. Yeah, that's 3/4. I'm liking it. The only other thing is whether or not it's level this way, and it does look like it's diving down. Yeah, we're about 1/4 inch down. So that has to do with the framing, and if you look down this, never mind, that doesn't matter. Yeah. There's only so much I can do to make this thing perfect. It's very difficult to do. But what I can do is pull this top nail and try to roll this thing up. I can actually maybe pad this out a little bit. And again, like I said, it's just a lot of trial and error. Just kind of getting it close, a little closer, and just dialing it in as you go. So I think I got enough flex in this to move it up. And still have it square on the wall. Relatively square. Nobody's gonna notice if it's a 1/4 inch out of square, but they will notice if it's really diving down. So I just pulled it out and then up. There's our 3/4. And that should have got us a lot closer. Yeah. So now we're maybe an 1/8 inch down. And this is going to be a little bit more. But that's pretty good too. It's about an 1/8 inch. Now I can maybe bring this in a little bit on, yeah, the top and bottom. I can bring it in a little. I'm going to split the difference. We'll go right there. And I think that's going to have to do. I think that's actually pretty good. Like I said, there's a little bit of tweaking here and there to get it as close as you can. And you know, you might have a 1/8 inch here, here. Still pretty plumb this way. A little bit out that way, I can move it over. So there you go. There's a box with nothing behind it. And our soffit, we're just going to tuck in there and throw some weight on top of it. Get these things clipped together. There we go. You could put a bead of silicone in there. I don't think those are going to come apart. I think they're locked in pretty good. And now I'm just going to continue on with the soffit. And maybe I'll show you how we go around a box like this. It's just a little bit of trimming, Just keep on going with the trimming. Let's see, trying not to distort that box too much. And usually I just get it started with my knife. You gotta be really careful that it doesn't like take off on you. It's nice to use a little roto zip. You can just cut around it, but I don't have one of those, so. It's just a matter of getting it started and then making sure you're inside that box. So you can get a good look at it. And now I can mark it out. Right there. There. And there. It's kind of hard to see back there. And a lot of times you only have maybe a ½ inch or so. ½ inch lip on the collar that goes around this block. So you want to make this cut nice and tight. You don't want to leave a bunch of burrs because they could end up sticking out past that collar. So it's good there. Now, just like I said, just keep on marking and trimming and try to stay within an 1/8 inch to that box, and you should be covered by that collar. And I think that's looking pretty good. All right, just gonna continue on with that and I'll be back. I used to just run this F channel on top of the corner, but I decided to change the way I do it now, and I make it so that the top leg, or the top of the bottom leg, is flush with the corner. That way the soffit can just run right over, and you leave on the top, and that actually holds the soffit down a little bit. So you can see how that looks nice and tight now. I think it's a much better look. All right, now we're gonna get the soffit on here. So I'm just gonna put this F channel on. And I left enough room behind my tab to slip this down in there. Actually, we'll need to trim a little off of this, because I like to have the bottom leg tight against the box. Makes it easier to measure my trim board that's gonna go up there. And right about there. Helps if you go up to the other ones too. And I'm actually going to cheat this a little. Not much, but just a little. Notch it around this block here. I'm going to cheat it up maybe an 1/8 inch. That way the soffit will fit a little better above it. It will make things curl up a little. That's why I don't want to go a lot. Just a smidgen. Yeah, looking good. There you can see how wiggly that top leg looks. But as soon as I slip this in there, it should pull tight because I overbent it. Yep. Now it has positive pressure against there. And it'll stay that way. Now I got the soffit in on this side, and you can see that I have a slight taper from there on that reveal. It's not as bad as it looked with the block that was underneath it, but I think it looks pretty good. So we got our soffit up there, and now we're going to get the gable metal cut, but we're not going to put it on yet. But we need to do that in order to figure out the flat metal. So I'm just following that same angle, and maybe I'll hold it on 10, that way I get a good idea where it's got to be. But we want to cut it actually so it's long enough to get to this point here. So I'm actually going to go way down there, probably at 24. And I know I made my metal plenty long, so if I cut off a little extra, that's okay. So I'll go 24. And this is the same way I usually do this. So I can find my snips. There we go. Snip that square down. And one good clean score, and you should feel it biting in. If you feel it like skipping across, you might have to change the angle of your blade, or you might need a new blade. And you gotta be careful not to crease it when you're doing this. So you wanna work it. You don't wanna try to force it. You just wanna wiggle it back and forth and get as much as you can of it. So if you just crank one part of it, you'll crease this part of the metal. All right, so now we're gonna get this up there in place where we want it. And that way we can trace the bottom. Ooh, they left a nail poking out for me. That was awfully kind of them. Guess I'll just go on the outside for now. And this will do two things. This will allow me to measure up to where the strapping bend is, and it'll also allow me to mount that bottom hem. And I know that between this bottom bend and the shadow bend is 3 3/4. It should be, yep. I'll wait on this actually until I have the bottom metal done. No, I'm going to redo that. I got that nail pounded in. Now I have it underneath the drip edge so it kind of stays by itself. And that actually did change where this contacts here. And the reason why I wanted to get that in there is so I could trace across the back here. So I wanted to get this right there. And that's an important point to get. The other thing I can do is figure out where their strapping is up there. It's like way up in here. And I'm going to go down a little bit below it. Maybe to right here. And if I go at a 50-degree angle, that'll put it level right here, because this is a 10-12 pitch. And when you go on the run, that's a 50-degree angle. So right here, we're going to go back this way, 50 degrees, and we're going to bend a tab up. And there's going to be a gutter going there, so it's going to cover this end, but we're going to make it all white anyways. But we're going to wait on that because we're going to get the flat metal now. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to line up the bottom leg of the flat metal with where I'm going to cut this one, where I'm going to cut that gable one going down. You'll see what I mean in a second. So I want to go with this point right here, I think. So I'm going to level this down, and I think that'll look good. So I'm going to go right there, and then I'm going to cut it that way. Now actually, I think the other side I went to here, the back leg of it. Yeah, I think, no, I went back to here. I'm going to go to there. Kind of making this up as I go along. And the idea for me is to just turn it all white. So 68.5, we'll have a little overlap there. And with this one, I want to cut it at an angle. The other one I cut square, and that was actually a mistake because that showed up above this gable metal. So we had 68.5, whatever, we'll go 69. And again, we're going to go at an angle, and it doesn't have to be an exact thing here. I could go at a 50-degree angle, but as long as I have a decent angle on it, it shouldn't show up above the other metal. And I wanted to bring this cut down far enough where it's going to cover the top of this metal here. I think I did. Where's that mark? There it is. Oh yeah, that'll be good. Got a couple little pieces of wood. Okay, let's scooch it over. And that's going to look good. I'm just going to nail this on there, and then I'll show you when I cut that piece. Again, we have this little hem here, and I just square cut these where I think they're going to come down, and basically so the point hits there. So there's kind of an order that this needs to happen in, and that's what I'm kind of trying to show you guys. Yeah. We still have the line right here that I traced where that metal comes down. So I'm just going to measure over, and we have 2.5 inches. So we just got to remember that measurement. Now we have 2.5 inches, and we're going to cut it up square with that. I could either go 40 degrees this way, or I could just hold my square there, because we know that we mark that on the other angle the other way. It's kind of a, like I've said a couple times, it's kind of a tricky thing to do right here. And I've seen a lot of people make a real mess of this kind of stuff. So I'm trying to show you guys what I do to have a clean job. This is where if I had lefty snips, I'd use them. But I don't. So I want to make sure I'm not cutting off too much of this. I want to get rid of some of it so that I can snip along that corner. This is where these long snips come in handy. So you can actually kind of get in there. And I'm kind of making a mess of this right now. I went off that corner a little. Try to get back in there without denting this stuff. There we go. So I can clean this up a little. That looks pretty good. And now I'll go with this top of the piece here with this cut. I think that should cover up all the wood in there. Now this is on the wrong side, you probably noticed. So we're just pushing this one in and pulling the other one out to get it on the right side. That's what it looks like. And like I said, it's all going to be white. So we might have to trim it because it might contact right here on this drip edge. This thing might. Or we might try to curl that drip edge down a little bit. We'll see. And this is easier if you have that down when you're slipping it in, so it doesn't get hooked on things. Alternatively, you could leave this on, I guess, and that might look actually a little better now that I'm thinking about it. Leave this uncut down to here and then fold the end over at 3/4, and you could have a straight line going up there. You know, there's a few different ways so. And it looks like it's contacting there. So I'm going to make a little mark. I'm going to cut it with the drip edge there. And I should be able to get my snips on that in place so I don't have to take it out. And there we go. Some people might not like that saying. I don't know why people say that. It's weird. Okay, well, that's it. I mean, I could run a bead of caulk there to make that totally filled in, but overall I think it looks pretty good. I'm hoping they continue their gutter to over here and it'll cover up most of that top edge there. So I'm not crazy about the way that top edge looks. That's why I was saying you could leave it together and then fold the other end over, and that would be a better look. I'm not gonna pretend like I did this perfectly, but overall I think it's pretty clean. You know, you got this lining up with that, and it kind of makes sense. And you know, honestly, like I've said before, you know, we are right on this. I'll give you a look from the ground in a second here. And also, what I like to do is get this thing nice and straight, nice and flat before you nail through the front of it. When you nail through the front, that actually kind of fixes it in place. so that if you push up over there and you had fixed it in place there, then it's more likely to bubble the piece of metal. So you want to make sure you have it all going nice and flat before you put your face nails. I'll put one right. Oh man, I'm going through 3 layers of metal, so it just bent. There it is. And there it is from the ground. So yeah, that's how I handle those funky situations. And you know, having that strapping band up, now that I'm thinking about it, putting the strapping band up actually helps out with the gutter situation, because the gutter will be able to run past a little bit. And if we put it down, then that would make them stop their gutter. And their gutter would hardly be catching this valley right here. So I think that's actually the right way to do it. And I think it looks pretty good.